All right, so welcome to our 2023 virtual parent panel. We're so excited to have another parent panel. I'm really grateful for our parents who are joining us here tonight as panelists. Just a quick rundown. My name is Bethany. I'm the Communications and Marketing Coordinator at Broadreach. I'll be kind of moderating the session. So we'll first do some introductions, go over some pre-prepared questions that we have. And then there'll be a time for an open Q&A. So if you think of any questions as we go, just like if you would write those in the Q&A box. We have Mats here from HQ as well. He'll be in the chat box answering some questions written out if they're more specific to maybe you and your student. And then we'll choose others that will be better for a broader audience that the parents can speak to more for everyone to share. All right, Mats, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Mats Mueller. I'm the director and owner of Broadreach Adventures. I have a very long history with Broadreach. I was a student on the first Broadreach program 30 years ago, and have been involved with Broadreach in almost every possible capacity since then, except as a parent yet. I'm still working on that. I was after being a student for a year, I was an intern and then a seasonal instructor, a scuba instructor, and a sailing instructor and international guide, and then a program coordinator and a program manager and a director for most of the last 15 years for Broadreach. So I really appreciate all you guys taking the time to join us and share your experiences tonight, offer your support and insights to other parents that are joining us on this journey. I think it's really incredibly valuable for them to hear from you guys, so I appreciate your time.
Awesome. Let's meet our panelists. Could you guys start off just saying your name, maybe where you're from, and then which trip or trips your student or students completed with Broadreach? Starting with Catherine, maybe, since I see her first on my screen.
Good evening. My name is Catherine Wheeler. My daughter just went. We're from Hertford, North Carolina, so we're in northeast North Carolina. We discovered Broadreach last year. I wish we had discovered it sooner, but my daughter was a rising junior, and her first trip she selected of all of them was the Amazon Galapagos Island Adventure. And she is, sorry about that, she is planning the Costa Rica veterinarian experience this summer. So that was our first trip.
Awesome. Eliza?
Hi, my name's Eliza Thorne. Excuse me. We are from Sharon, Connecticut. And my daughter Estella in 2021 did the 21-day sailing and scuba adventure in St. Martin. And then in 2022, last summer, Estella, so she was 15 that year. And then last year at 16, she did the alumni Red Sea trip in Egypt. And Matilda, her sister, my other daughter, did the Costa Rica sea turtle and marine life trip last year. And this year, Matilda will be 15 this summer, and she's going to do the 21-day sailing and scuba in St. Martin. I had to write it down.
Yeah, it's a lot. Thank you so much. Robert?
Yes, hi, I'm Robert Jones. We're in Charlotte, North Carolina, so it's nice to have a couple other folks from North Carolina here. I've got a long history with the program. We're very excited. I've actually got one son who has done 2 21-day programs, and his only criteria was he had to be living on a boat and it had to be a ton of diving. So he has thoroughly enjoyed it. And I've also got 5 nieces and nephews who have been on the program, one of whom is going back to work there again. So we're big supporters of the program. And while we certainly don't know as much as some of the other panelists or Mats, we can provide some perspectives from different angles, and certainly can't say enough good things about it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So I'm going to start off with a few questions about pre-program, so both the decision and preparation stage. So first off, whose idea was it to try a Broadreach trip in the first place? So was it your idea? Was it your students, a friend, someone else? Eliza, do you want to start off?
Sure. Yeah. So I was the one originally that found Broadreach online in a searching for summer travel, summer adventures. Both of my daughters had done trips with another company that was more hiking based out in Western United States, and they loved that. We were looking for just a little bit more. They were both kind of like, well, we don't really want to hike for a month again. And so I was the one that found it and introduced it to my oldest daughter. And I clearly remember she was like, but why would I don't know how to scuba or sail. And I was like, well, that's the point. You will not be able to say that after these 3 weeks. So she was at first like kind of thinking, I don't know, I don't think that might be for me. I don't do those things. She had never done either one. And she then kind of hopped right on board. We started reading the descriptions of the trips and she got really excited and now is like, you know, it's Broadreach or bust basically. And now she sees herself as a scuba diver for life. It is something she's now gotten her sister to do it so they can, as they get older, they can do scuba trips together. So I was the one that found it originally and proposed it to her.
That's so great to hear. Robert, what about you?
Yeah, and you know, as I alluded to a little bit in the intro, we had a slightly unfair advantage, and I actually used to work with a guy, Carlton Goldthwait, back in the day, so it predates maybe even Mott's first trip. And so I taught scuba diving and was fortunate enough to work at a camp. And for me, I never dreamed that I would be able to, you know, have a child one day that would have a desire to do it. So we never really pushed it. But as his cousins started to do it, and he really took an interest. I do have a daughter that did not get, just due to scheduling conflicts, get to get out there. So I've seen both sides of it. But with our son, Thomas, it was something that just was a unique experience. And he kind of heard about it through his cousins and through, you know, friends. And one of the things that he's taken away a little bit to your other panelists, I think he's really enjoyed being a part of something that not everyone totally understands, and living on a boat in a co-ed situation and doing life skills. So that's something I've seen him take a lot of pride in, and that's been, you know, special to him. So that's been fun. But that was really his pushing to go do it.
That's so great. Yeah, Carlton is our founder, actually. So he led the first trip that Mott's went on. Was our first Broadreach trip ever.
Oh, that's, yeah.
All right, Catherine, what about you?
Well, my daughter discovered Broadreach on her own. Actually, she was she's enrolled in a high school that is a boarding school, so she lives among other girls. And one of her newly met friends had been with another agency doing a fun trip over the summer, and she started talking about that. But I think as she went to check out that company, she found Broadreach somehow, probably much like Eliza was looking for her daughters, just found it. So out of all the programs, she chose one that really made me the most nervous, I think, to go to Ecuador and things like that. But once we started looking at it and reading, I'd never attended a panel, so I think this is very helpful. I wish I had, but just reading other commentary that other parents had made really made us feel. So we kind of took a chance, not knowing what we were getting into, but it's totally worth it. But yeah, she found it on her own. I'm just so glad she did, and was able to convince me of it somehow.
Yeah, we're glad she did. Right, and I see Claire has joined us. She, I know, was coming from another obligation, as we all understand, lots of jam-packed schedules. Our fourth panelist, Claire, do you want to introduce yourself and just maybe say which trip your student completed with Broadreach?
Sure. Hello, everyone, and I'm sorry I'm late. I wish I could say that it was another obligation. I did get home in time. I had technical difficulties because I was signing on with a different ID. But anyway, I'm happy to be here. So I'm Clara Hansen. I am in Connecticut, in Fairfield County, Connecticut. And my son did the Caribbean 21-day scuba and sail voyage. And his name is Jonas.
Awesome. And was it you that found the Broadreach trip, or was it Jonas's idea?
No, this was not Jonas's idea at all. We wanted to send him away because we wanted him to have a different experience from just the cocoon life that we have here where we live. And we thought it'd be great for him to just go off somewhere. Even though we've traveled in Europe together and in the US, we just wanted something that was a Jonas trip. And he was not too keen on it in the beginning because he wanted to work. But we were very set on sending him. If I could have sent him to Timbuktu, I would have done that. I just wanted him away, just to really experience life at 14 in a very secure, in a very safe environment. So from one cocoon to another, perhaps. But anyway.
A little bit bigger cocoon maybe, or
That's right.
a different one. That's great. I think we kind of talked a little bit about apprehensions both. I know, Catherine, you said you were a little bit nervous, and then Clara, you said Jonas was. What things did you do to prepare for your students' trip? What do you remember about the preparation phase? Start with Robert.
I think the biggest thing was probably the co-ed situation and just living in a small space, and with all the stuff that I'm trying to remember, all the trips that he's done with COVID and everything that's gone on, of just that socialization. And that was probably for us more of a excitement, and maybe this is from my wife and from me, maybe it's our apprehension more than it was his, but I think it was more of the social stuff than it was the actual physical diving and sailing for us.
Yeah, definitely. It's a lot of virtual for the past years. So,
yeah.
Catherine?
And was the question, I'm sorry, was the question how we prepared for it?
Yeah.
Or, okay,
Yeah, how did you prepare?
I had a lot of apprehensions. I could talk quite a bit for that. I think it was just with Elizabeth, is just of all the trips where she chose to go, I felt was probably really, really remote. And she was going to some places that we really need to kind of look at as far as what she needed to, what kind of vaccinations she needed and what kind of wildlife she was going to work around. So I meant really getting into what's recommended by the CDC and things like that. I think I'm glad I prepared for that early, because it was, being in a remote area in Northeast North Carolina, I had to go somewhere where I could get, the proper precautionary vaccinations and that sort of thing. And so that's kind of how I think we sort of prepared for just her being in that area of the world. And I'm glad I did it early, started early, because it was.
Yeah, definitely earlier the better. Get ahead of those things. Eliza, what do you remember about preparing for the trip?
Specifically, which I also wanted to mention, I'm sure it'll come up again tonight, but the parent portal that Broadreach sets up once you're enrolled in a trip sort of became a lifeline for us and a guide preparing for the trip. And it's very user-friendly and very thorough and comprehensive. And I find that there's even sections in there that address that Broadreach suggests, here's conversations that you should be having, or here's things you should be thinking about. And so we really took our time in the evenings to say, let's go on to the portal and take a look and read one of the sections and what you should know ahead of time. And that helped like her comfort and our comfort also. And then just talking through, as Robert was saying, the co-ed living. So my daughters are also in a boarding school, but obviously living in just a single gender dorm. I had, as a teenager, lived on a sailboat for 3 weeks in northern Germany that was co-ed. So I had a little bit of experience with like best times to use the bathroom, things like that, which I think are like for the kids, sometimes the worry is like the personal hygiene stuff and how that's going to look. And again, I'll say Broadreach does a really nice job on that portal to say, it's not that big of a deal. And the showering is actually hilarious. You kind of scrub on deck and everyone jumps in soapy and you sort of take these ocean showers, which becomes like one of the favorite stories. So I think we really use the portal as our guide to kind of guide our discussions and our research.
Yeah, awesome. Definitely a great tool.
Yeah.
Claire, do you have anything to add as far as preparations for Jonas's trip?
Sure. Well, very much like Eliza, we use the portal to really help guide the prep. But we just started early. We bought everything we needed to buy. We did it. I mean, we really it's preparation. I don't think, going back to what I said earlier, Jonas wasn't really apprehensive, and neither were we until the night before, until I realized that I was sending this 14-year-old on 2 flights And he also expressed to me that he was a little nervous himself, which was totally new to me. So, but we had prepared so beautifully. Even my husband, Jonas, and I had done the packing. So I just think really following the portal helped quite a bit because it was all checking off. And
Right.
then just talking through. I will say that I was a little apprehensive personally about the whole bathroom situation. So I actually reached out to a mom who, a local mom whose child had also been on a Broadreach trip. And it was a girl, so I knew there was a little bit of a difference there. But the mom said something to me which kind of clicked. And she said, yeah, it's close quarters, etc. But you know what? Kids will figure it out. And what may bother us as adults doesn't necessarily bother them. And once she said that to me, I was like, wow, that is so true. And by the way, that is exactly how it worked out. Jonas, of course, you have to find the right time to use the bathroom. Of course, you can't be in the bathroom for 15 minutes. There are things that you adjust, but none of that apprehension that I had. So I think it all works out.
I also, just to piggyback on that, which I found over our trips, we have done 3 trips with Broadreach. The instructors each time have really set the same tone, which is just get it out of the way right away, talk about it, put it out there. And then the kids are all like, oh, we can just talk about it openly. And then all of a sudden, this weird thing that they're worried about how to hide becomes nothing, becomes we all have to do it. So let's just get it. Let's just put it out there. And like Clara said, the kids figure it out really quick and it becomes sort of a non-issue, which I love because it could become an issue if it's never talked about, right? And so each of my kids' trips, there has been stories of where like the instructors led that way of thinking. That's just, this is what we're going to do. This is how you do it. Here's some tips, so. Yeah,
I definitely try and set that tone and make it an open environment and be like, this is completely normal to make it more acceptable and comfortable for everyone.
Yeah.
All right, shifting gears a little bit, what was your experience or how was your experience arranging your students' travel? Did you use a travel agency? Did you do it yourself? Any tips or difficulties you had there? Let's see, Clara, do you want to start?
Sure, no difficulty whatsoever. I did it all myself. I may have used American Express for a few questions, but no, everything was easy. I used the checklist again for all the, what needed to be purchased, the airline, the itinerary. I mean, all the instructions from Broadreach. I have to commend, I know we'll cover this later, but I have to commend Broadreach on its communications. And I just thought it was a very well-run, kind of phase of just getting us acclimated to this whole idea, to this trip. So it was very easy for me to do it myself.
Awesome. Catherine, how was your experience arranging the travel to Ecuador?
I have to promote Broadreach portal. Without it, I wouldn't have been able to have any direction at all. But I utilized Maupin Travel, which is an associate of Broadreach. It's a travel agency that's just, they have planned these trips and the travel for these trips, and they know all the different destinations. So I engaged them for my help. One thing I did do is I found out from Broadreach where most of the kids were flying, where their destination was in the states that they were flying out of. And so my goal was to get her there so there would be more students and more Broadreach t-shirts in that airport. So once I found out where most of the students were flying out of to Ecuador, I told Maupin Travel, and they planned everything. It was a really easy experience. And again, they're familiar with the trips, and they're also there sort of 24 hours should something flight get canceled or that sort of thing too. They could kind of help get her back with the group or something. But that was just easier for me to have someone else do it.
Yeah,
It's very helpful. I recommend them if you're not as comfortable making travel plans, for sure.
Yeah, and that is a resource you can utilize if you feel the need to. Robert, what about you? How was arranging travel for Thomas?
Again, I think you guys do such a nice job of spelling out the timeline and double checking things like your passport expiration date. If people are going on trip, I recommend that you double check that. And you guys probably can answer, but there was something strange that maybe it can't expire within, is it 6 months of the actual date?
Yeah.
That's right.
And I would say
It varies a little by country, but
Mhm.
that's the
Right,
standard. Yeah.
exactly.
standard. And so I would say once we got, through making sure we had all of those things in place, because I've actually, those were the more stressful times. And when I booked the flights, we were fortunate to have a direct flight from Charlotte. And there was a real comfort once our son got there and did see some other shirts, as somebody else mentioned. And then it turned out they were going on different trips, but it was fun to see him navigate. The one thing, I tried to walk with him to his gate, and it was funny. He had never really flown internationally by himself, but to see how quickly he was ready to ditch me was kind of nice. That actually gave me a little bit of comfort level. And then since then, he has enjoyed telling people that, of course, I can do whatever you're asking me to do. I flew across to another country by myself, so no issues. And it was fun to see him gain a little confidence.
That's awesome.
Did any of you use the unaccompanied minor service from the airline when your students flew the program?
No.
They're all in high school, I think, right? All your students were in high school.
Yeah, I think Matilda, her first year, could have qualified, and she begged me not to do it. She's like, please don't do it, because I don't want to have to wear the necklace and I don't want to stand out any more than I have to. So we didn't do it.
Yeah, Jonas had to fly, and I guess perhaps all of you, the unaccompanied minor. And that was very easy. One thing that I did want to add about the prep, which I thought was important for us, was a visit to the pediatrician, to the doctor, and just making sure that the doctor knew what Jonas was going to be up to. We got the vaccines, etc. So again, the checklist helped, but that visit to the doctor and making sure that he had, Dramamine in case he needed it. I mean, he came back with everything unused, but at least he had it.
Yeah, definitely. Get those med forms filled out too. Eliza, did you have anything to add about travel for Matilda and
No,
Estella?
similarly, I used Mop-In travel last summer for both the girls' trips, but before that, I just did it myself, but it was much easier. Estella's trip to St. Martin was just a direct flight out of New York City. And again, we got to the airport and we could already start spotting t-shirts, and she felt really comfortable. And Mop-In, as Catherine mentioned, was really helpful. And getting Estella to Egypt, the way that trip worked is that Broadreach makes every student on that trip connect at JFK, and they all fly the same flight, which was really nice because they were all together. I mean, they're all kind of awkwardly meeting each other in the airport, but similarly to Robert, like the first time after they see like the third Broadreach shirt, even if it's like the tail of a shirt out of a hoodie, they're like, all right, well, you can go, I'm fine. And then I will piggyback onto Clara that the other thing besides the portal, but one of the last steps is to print out this one sheet that's for the kids to navigate the airport with the Broadreach headquarter number highlighted, Mop-In travel number highlighted, and little tips for them. We don't really use it. I kind of stapled it inside of a folder where she kept her passport, and for Egypt, some visa information and vaccine cards and things like that. But that was really more of it wasn't really needed or used, but really comforting for me and for the kids to sort of say, okay, if something happens, I have a cheat sheet on how to navigate this airport. But again, also like Robert said, both of my kids felt so good that they kind of accomplished this thing. Estella's like, I flew 11 hours to Egypt by myself. Yes, I can handle taking the trash out at night, So it fills them with just a real sense of pride, because that is adulting, getting yourself into the airport through security lines to your gate, navigating all those pieces really before the trip even starts, instills already this, like, I already did that. Before they've even arrived at their destination, they're already conquering milestones. So it's really cool to see. I had very similar feelings to Robert. It was just just dropping them off. I was like, oh God, my work here is done, so it's very cool.
That's amazing. All right. What about during program? There's a lot of concern about, not being able to communicate with your student during program. I understand for first-time parents. How was the communication you had with your student during program, as well as with Broadreach? So, Claire, do you want to start?
So going in, we knew that communication would be limited. And again, to how I started, we wanted this trip for Jonas. So we were very prepared to disconnect from him as well. And so he did call. He did that one call a week. I think 1 week, maybe he called twice. I don't remember. And we just loved hearing from him. But we never really got a sense that he needed to connect more than what was possible, or that the being disconnected was an issue. And it certainly was not for us. I personally, just kind of a summary thought is that these trips are so wonderful for the children. I think they're just as good for us because, like Robert, just watching Jonas just go into that plane and not really look back. And here I am almost crying. So I just think it's great, to have had that opportunity. And it was no issues for us at all on either side.
Great. Catherine, how was communication for you?
Well, I like Claire, I knew going in that we would not hear from them very often, but and actually she didn't call when she had the chance, but there was types of emailing and that sort of thing. But one of the things that we found just really helpful, and we actually looked forward to it, is the Broadreach group does post on their site, and sometimes daily, and they have one of the students write up a scenario or a summary of the day's adventures, basically. So my husband and I just waited to see that posted on the site, and we could see pictures of them, and you can see your kid in this, this other country, just having the time of their lives. But they each student volunteered to write up the day. So in that, while we're reading that, we can see that, for example, Elizabeth slid and went into the water. We all helped her out. We thought it was fun, so I got to kind of learn the mishaps of the day through this written report. But it's very nice to have that. And we looked forward to it too. And again, tons of pictures. They upload so many pictures for you. So you see your child, and this group of kids all throughout the 3 weeks. So we communicated when they had, a chance through, either text or messaging or something like that. But after about the first week, we would actually say, well, we won't hear from her again until, and then, but, we expected that, but that nightly or every other day post from Broadreach was really something to look forward to. You feel like you're a part of it.
Yeah, I love reading those myself from here in HQ, seeing what all the trips
There's
are up to.
there's a quick I'm just gonna jump into the quick question from the chat, which is, do all the trips do that that daily summary and update? And the answer is yes. We have an updates section, as the parents indicated. The students write a kind of little short, they take turns as their leader of the day writing a short journal entry about what they did that day. We upload as many photos as we can, so you can get to see their smiling faces and all the activities. They're not all good photos. We just upload photos so that you can see them. There's very little editorial discretion on our side. More is better is what we decided. And there's very little editorial discretion in terms of what the students write too. They're really just kind of writing. Sometimes they write in the sound of a sea shanty or a poem, or sometimes they write long paragraphs, and sometimes they write a few sentences. But every group does it. And in your portal, you can, parents are by default automatically subscribed to get an alert when a new update is posted. You can unsubscribe from that if you want, but you can also subscribe grandma and grandpa or uncles and aunts or siblings or anyone else in your portal who wants to follow along. And
we did that. We added family members, and we sometimes would hear from them with so much excitement, even before we had a chance to look at. We lived for those daily emails, by the way. It is incredibly special to be able to see this chronicle of the trip and the personalities coming out. So I'm so glad, Catherine, that you mentioned it.
Robert, how was your communication during the program?
I think they covered it very well. As far as the biggest thing I was going to add that Catherine and Claire have touched on, not only did we enjoy seeing the updates, we did live for them, but we also enjoyed seeing kind of and being able to kind of predict who maybe the people were that we didn't know the other ones in the write-up, and try and understand that relationship and say, oh, it looks like he's getting to know so-and-so better, and can't wait to hear that backstory when he comes home. So it really gives you a nice way of seeing your child in there and having a good time, but then, B, being able to see them kind of evolve and grow more confident, even with the write-ups and the still shots. And so it's a pretty neat experience to see the trip through that daily piece. We never felt like we didn't have a pulse of what was going on. And one of the trips, they did have, it wasn't, the hurricane, but it was enough of a bad weather that they said, hey, we're going to bring the boats back. And I think it may have been near St. Lucia or something the first year. And, I felt great because I thought Broadreach got out ahead of any of the storm. And I didn't really, to be honest, I wasn't even paying that much attention because I was not that worried. And I knew that he was in good hands, but it really helped that the communication from Broadreach was out ahead of it, that said, hey, we're going to stay here an extra night just so that the boats and everybody are safe and kids go ashore. And so not only do we feel good about him having fun, but we felt very good from a safety standpoint.
That's awesome. Eliza, did you have anything to add about communication?
Really, I could second quadruple all of that. Also live for those trip updates. I love it. And I love what you said there, Robert, which it gave you an opportunity when they come home to say, oh my gosh, you have to tell me about this day that, Robert wrote about, and that sounded crazy. Tell me about that. So as you're trying to as you're discussing the trip, which I know we're going to get to in a little bit later, how stories eke out, days, months, weeks later. That's another tool. So not only is it so comforting when your kid is there, and I lived for it too. I was like, it's here. We just got the email, and I'm like, stop everything, open the email. But it was a really nice tool afterwards to sort of go back and say, this sounded really funny. Tell me more about that. And also, Robert, I had a similar experience with Estella's trip, the first Broadreach trip. And they pulled boats back in. And I agree. We got an email from Broadreach, maybe even a phone call, I might even say, but maybe just an email. And I felt the same way. And I was like, well, they're ahead of it. I guess I don't have to worry about it. And just like Robert, I hadn't seen anything. I wasn't looking at the weather. So I love that the kids don't have their phones or SIM cards. I love that they're not Snapchatting their friends at home. I love that they're just living in the moment. So one of the things when I researched Broadreach that I found out was this lack of communication was a highlight for me. That's a bonus. They don't need to call me every day. They shouldn't be calling me every day. You should be on deck talking to your friends, playing the games, engaging in all the activities. You're going to see me in 21 days. You can see me then. So that's what I love. One of the things I love about Broadreach.
Yeah, sometimes the phone can hold you back from really living in the moment and making friends. So kind of you alluded to that actually. What are some ways that you connected with your student after when they got back and had them share their experience with you? I don't know if anyone has anything on the top of their head they want to share first.
Because I was just thinking about it. I think the important thing is to also sort of let them digest. I mean, it's so tempting the second they get in the car at the airport to be like, okay, just tell me everything. And it's really cute. They sort of have funny stories and then it kind of gets quiet for a minute. And then then something reminds them of something. And I had to tell their grandmother that. Their grandmother's like, I want a date Monday at 4, sit down, tell me everything. It's like, they need a little more guidance to be able to, how do you describe a life-changing event that took place over 21 days in a 20-minute hang with your grandmother? So I think it's important to sort of let the stories come out naturally as you're filling in things that they might have missed at home, and then using that those entries when you're looking for a little more to say, oh, tell me about this day that you went to that, the ruins, that seemed really cool. What was different about it? Or look at this picture. What's this kid doing? Or, but yeah, I actually love how things kind of slowly come out. There's the immediate stories, and then, a couple days later at dinner, they'll just say, did I tell you about that, about Tim when he just jumped off the boat? And, and so as they remember things, as things come up in their consciousness too, then they kind of spill it. So I think it's a really just natural process of them kind of telling sort of the big highlights, and then the funny stories kind of eke out in your conversations. That's how I find it with them.
Anyone else have anything to share about connecting with your student afterwards?
I just think if for our son's a little quieter, but I think that was well said about giving him a little space afterwards. I think the one thing we had to adjust maybe more as parents was to realize you don't want to get aggravated, like, wait a minute, why are you down? You just had this time of your life, and you have to give them the space and time to realize that is a natural progression. I think you guys send out some communications to kind of warn everybody a little bit about it, because you want to say, and then you remind yourself, oh, they're sad because they're realizing the likelihood of seeing the same group together and friends, and you can start to see the wheels turning of going, wow, that was a great Polaroid picture that I'm not going to get to participate in again. And that was kind of a tough lesson, for them, is to give them that space.
The sadness is real. When this summer we picked up Estella, and again, this Egypt flight, the whole trip, the whole crew flew back. And then the minute they got through security, they kind of all went their other ways, and they were hugging and crying, and boys were crying and the girls were crying, and the boys had been carrying some of the girls' bags, and they were trading. Someone had someone's sweatshirt. And I mean, it was really emotional to see. And that kind of happens over the the days and weeks too, the sort of mourning, the loss of this. They became a family in 21 days. And then it's like, and it's, thanks, Robert. That's important to remember, to let them kind of have that space.
Yeah, I actually think that Jonas won't really totally appreciate this experience until he's older. While he came home, I think, I want to say a little bit more mature. He's always been described as an old soul in a kid's body. And the stories, by the way, just so similar experience where I just gave him space. He actually, when I picked him up at the airport, he wanted to sleep in the back seat, but it was very late. I'd gone to JFK by myself. I wanted company in the front seat, even if it was just sitting there sleeping. So I said, no, you're coming to the front seat. Well, he entertained me the entire way, just with stories. And these were just the highlights. The backstories kept coming out over the next weeks and months. And I just found out earlier this week that he's doing a paper in English, and he's writing about his Broadreach trip.
Oh,
So
wow.
I think that just letting him really digest this at his own pace, and I think it'll be at different points in his life, he'll get something different out of it, and not to really push to hear anything from the very beginning. I think that that's really important.
That's great.
I think that's really, really astute observation, that I think the changes in the value of some of the things that students get out of the program can take a long time to metastasize and to become evident to them and to you. Some changes are obvious right away, and some take a long time. One of the highlights of my long career here at Broadreach is hearing from people a decade after their Broadreach program about how it changed them fundamentally and really impacted how they see the world, how they see themselves in it, and the opportunities that are available to them. That warms all of our hearts, and that's and it is an incredibly common refrain to hear. It's not, we hear it, people are constantly coming out of the woodwork and telling us that, which is so great. It makes everything we do absolutely worth it.
Yeah. Catherine, how did you connect with Elizabeth after her trip?
Pretty much the same, kind of just let her at her own pace tell us. Of course, I wanted to hear everything right away because I had, watched her throughout her trip, and I wanted to know about that day and that sort of thing. But one thing that I remember, when we picked her up from the airport, we were traveling to a beach place to have, you know, a little vacation before she went back to school. And she was on her phone with her friends from Broadreach. I mean, they stayed in touch. They had group chats going on and who got home quickest and this type of thing. So they really did keep in touch. And to this day, I mean, she still has, you know, some of the closest ones that she was with to the trip, you know, not everybody. She still talks to them. You know, like one of them is a freshman in college out in Hawaii, and she was telling me all about Sophia's, you know, experience out there. So they make lifelong friends. They really do. But I can just remember wanting to hear about the trip, but she was still with her friends on the phone, you know, talking about what they were doing next and how they were going to spend the remainder of their summer. But we didn't hear it all. We wanted to, but you know, we know that she had a fabulous time, and some of those things she'll never forget. And probably don't realize too much later how wonderful the trip was. But it was great. It really was. We could tell, even though we didn't hear all the good details.
Yeah. Let's see, maybe one last question. Did you notice a change in your student coming back, whether it's right away or maybe after some time had passed? I see Catherine nodding.
I do. It's just, I think everybody's talked about that. Just such a confident, maturing over 21 days. I mean, I can do anything kind of thing, but also her trip in general, what she did, she had much of a greater appreciation of Mother Earth. I can remember her post she made when she got back. I can just read it with tears, and just how she really realized how important it was to protect our environment and the creatures in it, and what a rare experience, you know, she had to go over and see and work along with ecologists and conservationists. But I saw that right away, and I still see it now. But I just really think the confidence and maturity she had when she came back, totally not afraid to do anything. We've done another trip since then, just for a little week. You know, I can see that she's not, you know, worried about anything, because she accomplished this and she did it with, you know, great success. And so I see a big girl now.
Oh, it's amazing. Anyone else notice change?
The only thing I would add, and I saw a question in the chat about kind of social and or emotional issues and being trained for it. And you know, the one thing I would say is, and I think that the answer on the chat was great, of, you know, that the counselors are well trained. So the second trip, our son came back, and you know, what I think was interesting for us is, you know, he got to meet people with diverse backgrounds, because even though this is we felt very privileged to be able to send Thomas on this trip, everyone still brings different life perspective, different friends, groups, and so I think his second trip was a few of the kids emotionally connected, and some of them were dealing with issues, and to hear our son kind of talk through and try, and it seemed like he had known that person then for a lot longer than the 3 weeks. And that surprised us a little bit. I was kind of expecting just okay, tell us about the dives, tell us about the sailing. And I didn't really expect to hear the emotional friendships, and where he was trying to offer advice even after the trip, and said, well, hey, I think this is how you may have to handle the situation. And so we were pleased that the counselors gave them a chance to talk and get to know each other, but within guidelines, and they seemed to just really have a nice time learning from each other.
I think that what I saw in Jonas was this kind of increased confidence that he can do anything. As I mentioned earlier, he shared with me the night before he was going to fly that he was a little apprehensive about navigating the airport by himself and making the connection. And so just the traveling by himself and going to the different islands and just living on a boat with for 21 days, 5 different boats with so many, 11 other people he didn't know. I definitely detected it's subtle. You can't, but I just know he came back sort of, more confident Jonas. And I think, again, it will just continue to grow over time. And I think that Broadreach is part of that foundation for him.
It's amazing. Yeah, it's hard to put your finger on it sometimes. It's just that knowing what you've accomplished and what you can do. Eliza, what about you?
Yeah, I'm very similar to everyone. Right away, the self-confidence is apparent in even just the way they're telling the stories, and the satisfaction of that they had this adventure on their own, outside of your cocoon, outside of the home, outside of your neighborhood, and they can share these stories with you, just gives them a really deep sense of satisfaction and gratification, besides all the skills that they learn, that they're, the sailing and the scuba, like Robert said, that's almost secondary in some ways, right? There's all the other things that they've learned to navigate that all add up in the end to just they mastered this huge thing. And they feel really good about it. It's impressive. And they want to do it more. I mean, we're going to do our 4th Broadreach trip this summer. It's like, they want more. So it feels good. They feel really good.
That's awesome. Well, I think we're running out of time here. Mats, I don't know if there's any other questions in the chat. If we have maybe get to one. Otherwise, I think we're at our 45-minute max. You're on mute.
Scott, yeah, thank you.
I can hear him through the wall.
I think these guys did a great job addressing most of the questions that have popped up in the chat. There's a lot of apprehension and challenge with flights in general this summer. It is an unfortunate fact that it seems like the airline capacity is still down this summer. It has not caught up with demand, and so there are fewer flights, and it is harder to book flights, and flights are frankly a little bit more expensive than they have been historically. We still have some vague hope that that airlines will see this demand and start to add some additional capacity, but obviously they're constrained by HR issues and all sorts of other things that is making it hard for them. I would encourage families who are struggling with travel plans, especially ones who are already enrolled or ones who are thinking about enrolling, to give our office a call or to call Mop and Travel, as some of our panelists have done. We're not able to create flights out of thin air, but we do have a lot of experience with travel to different places, and particularly the places that we go, and sometimes we can come up with creative solutions that might help.
Maupin, I will add, Maupin really helped. Last year, Matilda had to get from New York to Costa Rica to Miami for this flight, and she couldn't get in. I couldn't get her there early enough, and so we ended up both flying to Miami. But Maupin was super helpful. I mean, we ended up working it out that I flew with her to Miami. We spent a night in Miami, and then she went. But Maupin kind of did the heavy lifting and kind of could really, quicker than I could online, coordinate that, and then helped me book my flight back. And so they were huge. Yeah. So I would try them first. Don't despair.
Don't despair. Yeah. And I guess the other questions that we've seen both submitted ahead of time and in real time, there's obviously everyone is concerned about the safety of their children when they're traveling, when they come on our Broadreach program. We can certainly speak to that. If you have specific questions about safety for particular activities or a particular program or a particular location, definitely give our office a call. But can any of you guys speak to whether you had shared that apprehension in the run up to your program and how it was allayed, or how you feel about it now?
Yes, there's this general apprehension of just watching your baby go off, right? But I want to believe, and it's really the way that I kind of see, I saw this, and you have to trust. So we actually had, as soon as my husband found Broadreach, the next day we asked for a call. So we had a Zoom with one of your directors. We had a half hour, 45-minute Zoom. It was fabulous. So we got a lot of those questions out of the way, you know, the sort of the technical question, how does this work? I think Broadreach has such phenomenal experience with these kinds of adventures. And so I think a little apprehension is always healthy, but at the same time, Broadreach knows what they're doing. And you know what? Our kids are strong too. And so I don't know, that's really the way that I viewed it and the way I approached it. And I still think of it. It'll work itself out. And in terms of scuba diving safety and all that, again, yeah, did I think about, oh my God, what I knew the things that could go wrong, but you know what? You can't then we do keep him home in our little cocoon, which is what I started the conversation with, saying I didn't want a cocoon for him. I wanted him gone. I wanted him to experience, you know, an adventure, a life-changing adventure. So anyway, long-winded, but that's really, I think, it works for me.
Yeah, I want to piggyback on that too, because it's also really important to send the message to your child that you are confident in their ability to get to the airport, to make the connection. If you start to say, you know, maybe I should go with you, maybe we should go together, you're sending the message that you don't believe that they could do it, and that there is some intrinsic danger that you don't feel safe enough.
Yeah, I just want to add one thing.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Eliza.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
2 days before Jonas was about to fly, I actually went to, came to my husband and I said, "Hun, maybe I should just fly with him to Miami. Let me just fly with him. I'll spend the night. I love Miami. Let me just go there." And my husband said, "Absolutely not." And thank goodness he said that, because I could have. Nothing would have stopped me. But no, Eliza, you hit it on the nail's head. It just sends, the whole thing is a big message, right? For them, for us as well. So I like how you said that.
Yeah, my only second thing I will say is if you're a little bit nervous, just call Broadreach. Anytime I had a question and it wasn't answered on the portal and I just needed a person, every time I call headquarters, I get a very friendly, very capable person. And not gonna lie, sometimes it's the same person you talked to before. I've talked to Virginia like 6 times. So every time you call, it's like, oh, it's Eliza again, quick question. And they're really helpful and they will give you the confidence that you need. But again, trust your kid and give them the message that you know they can do it, because that's kind of what they need to do it. They need you to say, you've got this, you're going to be fine. Broadreach takes 12, 13, 14, 17, 18 all the time. You're not the only one. You're going to be fine. Go to it.
I was just going to add in more of some specific examples that, because Broadreach has been going to these places, they have doctors, they have a team of people, and the folks there, from our experience, are there to help facilitate. They want people coming back, and it's a very hospitable location, the ones that we've participated in. And, I can remember our son came back and we didn't find out till after. He's like, "Yeah, I went to the doctor along with about 5 other people who had ear infections," or things happen. And one of the things I was pleased about was, from the standpoint of he got his certifications, because I was like, "Oh gosh, I hate to see you miss out on dive." He's like, "Oh, Dad, it's all right. We made stuff up." But yeah, we were still safe. And I never felt pressured. I never had to, our son didn't ever feel like, "Oh gosh, if I miss this one dive, my whole trip is shot." So I was kind of trying to balance that element of going, yeah, I want him to be safe, but I also want him to come back and having gained some skills. And that was maybe not the right perspective, but he was quick to say, "Hey, it all worked out." And we had a great time at the doctor's office, because would you believe, he said, the doctor said, "You must be a runner," to my son. And I was like, gosh, that's so he loved even those interactions with folks, in the local community. And so I think Broadreach does a nice job of having a broader network than just the counselors that are there that they can access.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got lists of, doctors, clinics, whatever, in all the locations that they go to. So,
and my kids traveled during COVID, and it was, nerve-wracking, and kids were getting COVID, and they were so well taken care of by the counselors, and just like Robert said, by the support systems, that it was incredible. And it was during, a really harrowing time. So
Awesome. I think we should wrap it up. I'm so thankful for our 4 panelists for being here tonight. Yeah, your perspectives are really invaluable. If anyone here in the audience has additional questions, feel free to give us a call. We're also happy to connect you with other alumni parents if you have questions that you'd like to ask them specifically. We're always here, and we love talking to parents and families and helping you however we can. So thanks for joining us, both panelists and everyone who's attending us.
It's nice to
And
meet
have
you all.
a great night. Yeah.
Yes, thank
Yeah.
you. This was
Yeah,
wonderful.
thank you all for your time. We really appreciate it.
Sure. Anytime, anytime. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Take care.
Good night.
Bye-bye.